Frodo is one of, if not the most complex, interesting, and yet underrated characters in The Lord of the Rings. Despite arguably being the main character, despite carrying the titular ring, he very often gets overshadowed or swept under the rug by much more beloved characters. I'm looking at you, Samwise Gamgee. But I believe that Frodo's character is far more interesting and rich than people give him credit for. By being one of the most unheroic heroes in literature, Frodo embodies the moral framework of The Lord of the Rings. And ironically, I think his character shines the strongest when he's at his weakest point, standing over the flames of Mount Doom, trying to make a decision that could damn or save the world. He is a simple man tasked with an inhumanly difficult assignment, and in the end, the day is saved, but that's in spite of Frodo's actions, not because of them. So the question that I want to ask today is, did Frodo fail? My deepest apologies if you hear my glass rattling around in this video. I'll try to keep from moving it around. But the universe decided to make this video super immersive by making it 98 degrees out this weekend, and it's not a whole lot better inside my unair-conditioned studio, so I need this so that I don't turn into a puddle of sweat by the end of this video. The Ring is a peculiar villain because really, it doesn't have any character traits. It is a simple embodiment of evil, which means, because nothing is ever simple in the world of Middle-earth, that it's rather quite complicated. Tom Shippey describes the Ring as operating with two different functions. There is an internal angle and an external angle. It preys on our internal weakness, it takes advantage of the darkest parts of ourselves, but it also has a definite external force. And if the Ring had acted solely with either one of these things, it would have been a much shorter story. If it solely functioned internally, if it only had the ability to corrupt your soul, then they could have just locked it in a chest or tossed it in the ocean and called it a day. On the contrary, if it only acted externally, if it had no internal corrupting power, then someone really strong like Gandalf or Galadriel could have just carried it to Mount Doom and destroyed it no problem. But evil doesn't have to pick and choose, and the Ring operates in both ways, making it an incredibly difficult enemy to overcome. They couldn't weasel their way out of this, and they couldn't attack it with brute force. And that is where Frodo comes in. Frodo begins his journey just about as average as you could possibly get. Sure, he's a bit more bold, he's a bit more adventurous than your typical hobbit, but that puts him just roughly on the same footing as a normal person. He likes his meals and his armchair, and although he's considered going off on a quick adventure at one point or another, he's still deeply in love with the Shire. He isn't chosen to be the ring bearer because of any extraordinary traits, any bravery, any wisdom. He simply stumbles into the role because he was marked as Bilbo's heir. And yet, Frodo seems perfectly suited to the role of ring bearer. Anyone with too much inherent might, anyone with a strong sense of justice, would have had their good intentions twisted, all of their power and energy used for evil purposes. Anyone too selfish or conceited would have pulled a Gollum and kept it for themselves. Frodo, however, tread the knife's edge between these two faults beautifully, neither too ambitious nor too self-serving. And this manifests in him being quite afraid. He thinks he's ill-suited to the task, and he's quite out of his depth. I feel very small and very uprooted, and, well, desperate. The enemy is so strong and terrible. But in Rivendell, Elrond explains, "The road must be trod, but it will be very hard, and neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. This quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. Yet, such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere." Frodo doesn't need to be strong or wise. In fact, it's his small hands, his humility, that makes him the perfect person for the job. The ring just can't get a foothold on him like it could with Gollum or Gandalf or Galadriel or Boromir. Serendipity may have been the thing that first put the ring in Frodo's hands, but in Middle-earth, fate has a funny way of working out. But fate alone cannot shield Frodo entirely from harm. As early as the end of the first book, he struggles to take the ring off, even when he is fully aware of the danger it heralds. The two powers strove in him. For a moment, perfectly balanced between their piercing points, he writhed, tormented. Suddenly, he was aware of himself again. Frodo, neither the voice nor the eye, free to choose, and with one remaining instant in which to do so. He took the ring off his finger. Frodo is able to hold on to himself for quite a while, much longer than anyone else anticipated, but as he and Sam near Mordor, as the Dark Lord's power grows, Frodo begins fraying at the seams. Even a very simple nudge, like Sam offering to carry the ring just for a while to lighten Frodo's burden, it nearly sends him hurtling off the edge. A wild light came into Frodo's eyes. "Stand away! Don't touch me!" he cried. "It is mine, I say! Be off!" His hand strayed to his sword hilt, but then quickly his voice changed. No, Sam," he said sadly. "But you must understand, it is my burden, and no one else can bear it. It is too late now, Sam dear. You can't help me in that way again. I am almost in its power now. I could not give it up, and if you tried to take it, I should go mad." Although the ring couldn't manipulate Frodo at first, through time, stress, thirst, and hunger, it has worked its roots in deep. So deeply that Frodo might go just as mad as Gollum if it were forcibly taken away from him. Still, he has enough of his wits about him to press forward on his ordained task, all the way to the crack of doom. It's only there, a simple gesture away from salvation, that Frodo snaps. "I have come," he said, "but I do not choose now to do what I came to do. I will not do this deed. The ring is mine!" And suddenly, as he set it on his finger, he vanished from Sam's sight. Now, it's important to note the wording here. In this quote, Frodo isn't saying that he is now making the decision not to destroy the ring. He's saying that he does not choose. It's almost as if something else, the ring, is making that choice for him. But it's in this moment, when Frodo is at his most utterly helpless, that larger forces prove themselves to be at work. Gollum re-enters the scene, desperate for revenge to reclaim his lost ring, and in his utter lust for it, he throws himself and the ring over the edge, hurtling into the fires below. Now this might seem like luck, it might seem like happenstance, but in truth it is only made possible because of one of the core themes of The Lord of the Rings: pity. Pity is a recurring and primary theme of Gollum's story from his very first mention. Gandalf tells Frodo the story of Gollum's wretched life, of his slow, aching disintegration into madness, and Frodo says, "What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had a chance." Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy. "I am sorry," said Frodo, "but I am frightened, and I do not feel any pity for Gollum. He deserves death." "Deserves it?" I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends. I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it. And he is bound up with the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before the end. And when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not least. In this story, pity doesn't just mean compassion or regret. Pity folds in with the other themes of the story of faith, of hope, of mercy, to become something much larger. Gandalf is wise enough to admit that he doesn't know everything, that there are forces at work far beyond their knowing. It is not up to any one person to control destiny, and anyone who thinks that's even possible has lost the point entirely. Rather, Gandalf tells us that all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And when the time comes, Frodo decides to fall back on to pity. Far later in the story, when Gollum and Frodo meet for the first time, Frodo says that now that I see him, I do pity him. It is only because of mercy, Bilbo's first mercy when he spared Gollum, and Frodo once again deciding to leave Gollum alive, that Frodo and Sam are able to make it into the heart of Mordor. And although Gollum proves himself unchanged, he is too far gone to be redeemed, mercy and pity still reign supreme. As Frodo and Sam struggle to scale Mount Doom, Gollum returns once more at the 11th hour, seeking vengeance. He attacks Frodo at first, but is struck down by Sam. The two of them grapple, but once it's made clear that Gollum is outmatched, he resorts to begging. "Don't kill us," he wept. "Don't hurt us with nasty, cruel steel. Let us live, yes, live just a little longer. Lost, we're lost, and when the precious goes, we'll die, yes, die into the dust." He clawed up the ashes of the path with his long, fleshless fingers. "Dust," he hissed. Sam's hand wavered. His mind was hot with wrath and the memory of evil. It would be just to slay this treacherous, murderous creature, just and many times deserved, and also it seemed the only safe thing to do. But deep in his heart, there was something that restrained him. He could not strike this thing, lying in the dust, forlorn, ruinous, utterly wretched. He himself, though only for a little while, had borne the ring, and now dimly he guessed the agony of Gollum's shriveled mind and body enslaved to that ring, unable to find peace or relief ever in life again. Gollum is spared by pity once more, but not even something as powerful as mercy can save him from the machinations of fate, and he plummets to his death, his purpose finally revealed. The day is saved. Aragorn is made king, Merry and Pippin are made soldiers, Legolas and Gimli are made friends. The free people of Middle-earth will continue to live on in peace, and against all odds, even Frodo and Sam make it home alive. And yet, this didn't happen because of Frodo. He was not able to do it. He was taken over by the ring, and the victory that happened seemed to have happened randomly. So does that mean that he failed? And that's not an easy question. I kind of suspect that everyone will have their own answer. In fact, I'd bet that most of you will say that he didn't fail. But for Tolkien, the answer to that question was quite simple. No, Frodo failed. It is possible that once the ring was destroyed, he had little recollection of the last scene, but one must face the fact. The power of evil in the world is not finally resistible by incarnate creatures, however good. According to the author, he did unequivocally fail, but Tolkien explains that this was sort of inevitable. At that point, the power of the ring, the dual internal and external push of it, was too much for anyone to handle. Certainly, Frodo made it further than probably anyone else would have, and that is commendable, but at that point, evil had become irresistible for the ring-bearer. This is because Tolkien was never trying to turn Frodo into a hero. Merry and Pippin get close, and Sam is very courageous, and all of them do acts that could be considered heroic, but they will never become the heroes that we know of old. But really, doesn't that make for a much more beautiful story? Tolkien certainly thought so. Surely it is a more significant and real event than a mere fairy story ending in which the hero is indomitable. It is possible for the good, even the saintly, to be subjected to a power of evil which is too great for them to overcome in themselves. In this case, the cause, not the hero, was triumphant, because by the exercise of pity, mercy, and forgiveness of injury, a situation was produced in which all was redressed and disaster averted. In the end, it's not any one person's agency, any one person's heroism that saves the day. Rather, it is Frodo, the vessel for all of our humility, all of our pity and our mercy, our foolishness and our simplicity, all of our humanity, who lays himself down as the sacrificial lamb. He had to bear the greatest burden of all, the knowledge of his own failure in that critical moment, in order for everyone to be saved. And this is no light matter. While no one but Frodo and Sam will ever really know the extent of what happened on the Crack of Doom, it weighs catastrophically heavy on Frodo's conscience. I would argue that it's one of the biggest factors in his decision to leave Middle-earth at the end of the Return of the King. Do not be too sad, Sam. You cannot be always torn in two. You will have to be one and whole for many years. You have so much to enjoy and to be and to do. I have been too deeply hurt, Sam. I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for me. It must often be so, Sam, when things are in danger. Someone has to give them up, lose them, so that others may keep them. In order for everyone else to be left whole, for there to be a happy ending, somebody had to be torn in two. Somebody had to give themselves up. Frodo saves the day, not by being a hero, not even by succeeding, but by surrendering himself wholly and completely to his calling. He was never meant to be a hero. Rather, he exists to call into question our very concepts of a hero, to rewrite the old myths into something much more important. We never watch Frodo win a battle, or sit on a throne, or even triumph over evil. Instead, we watch him be torn apart by the forces at work in this story. But the message is clear. Human beings will always have human limitations. Even the very best of us, the saints among us, they will stumble, they will fall. But as long as we hold on to our decency, as long as we treat others with mercy, as long as we do our part, the rest will take care of itself. If we condemn a character like Frodo, if we call him insignificant or weak, if we call him a failure just because he failed, I think we're really just condemning ourselves. None of us could have hoped to succeed where Frodo failed, and Tolkien makes it quite clear that that was never the goal. Rather, we need to try to exhibit the traits that allowed Frodo to succeed in spite of himself. His mercy, his pity, his love, his trust. We all will fail. We'll make mistakes. We'll hurt each other. But if we try to do good in spite of that, we become something much better than heroes. We become a part of humanity. While I do like to think that I answered this question pretty thoroughly, I would love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments. I think the problem with Lord of the Rings characters is that they're all so great. They're also multi-dimensional and rich and symbolically important, so it's just nearly impossible to choose favorites, but Frodo is growing on me over time. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing if you haven't, because I put out videos almost every week and I would love to have you join our little community. My Patreon is linked in the description if you want to support me that way. People who support me on there are the ones who make videos like this possible, but either way, I am so glad that you were able to join me this week. I hope that you all have a very happy, hobbity day.